has changed over the past 60 years. Globalisation, social, cultural changes, medical advancements, environmental awareness, transportation, the list goes on. Now, that's in my 60 years because I'm in my 60s, but you might be in your 50s or your 40s or your 90s. So you will have noticed lots and lots of things have changed. Now, where I finished up when I started thinking about this was about the technical advancements that have happened in the world. So microcomputers came in around the 70s, 80s, and the internet in the 90s as such. Now, I was a CEO of a tech company in the 80s. So, and that was quite an unusual thing for a female to be in that role in itself. And it was an interesting time for me, as far as learning and growing and just seeing how much things changed from when I was a younger person as such. And then if I think about, the tech that's available these days, we got smartphones, we got laptops, there's social media, and all of these things have had a massive impact on how we communicate, how we work, how we access information. And if I go to just communication alone, the primary modes of communication when I was a child was face-to-face conversations, or telephone calls, or letters. So, hey, everybody, it is Peter, Sal and Sue here. I forgot to let you know who we were. I got on a tangent. Hey, girls, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. And so I just wanted to go with this face-to-face conversations for a moment, because I can remember as a kid, we'd be in the front yard or out the backyard, and our parents would be, sitting on the front footpath or on the front step, and, they'd be talking to the families next door or, either side, or there'd be a whole group of people on the footpath just talking. The street that I lived in, came down and then it split into two. I knew every kid that was in that street. We all went to the same school. We either all went to that public school or the Catholic school on the top of the hill, so we worked and lived in the area that we were in. And so you got this really great exposure to different people, and you didn't worry about being out and about of a night time because you knew everybody had eyes on you, type of thing, because it was a safe environment. You lived there, you worked there, you played there. And then if I think about telephone calls, if you were lucky enough to have a phone, it was plugged into the wall and the conversation everybody could hear. You couldn't go sneaking off anywhere. And if you didn't have a phone, there was a phone box, and in the local area. So you would walk to that phone box and you'd make a phone call, or maybe a neighbor had a phone. So if there was an emergency, you'd go to that neighbor's place and you make that phone call and get messages back and forth around the family or the friends or whoever you needed to talk to. And of course, then there was the letters. I had grandparents that I lived with, but I also had grandparents who lived a fair way away. So I would sit as a kid and write a letter, hey, Ma and Pa, how's things going on the farm, etc., etc. But if you think about how we communicate now, we're just spoilt for choices, right? We got text messages, we got emails, we got social media, video conferencing, instant messaging apps. We can get connected to anybody anywhere in the world. And where my head went with all this is that everything is immediate, right? So it's like, give it to me and give it to me now. And so and if we don't get things now, we get impatient with it, we can get frustrated with it. And so I'm wondering whether the rules of conduct, well, I feel like they're a little blurred as far as how we treat one another, how we communicate with one another. And I'm wondering if it's because of this immediate gratification. Now, don't get me wrong here. I love tech. I'm a fan of it and everything like that. But what do you think? Do you think it's because the immediateness of everything that we've forgotten to have a little bit of patience?
Definitely. I also think, and just recently, I think it was the Senate committee is looking at in the workforce
Yeah.
where people, bosses might be sending an email at 10 o'clock at night or
Yes.
outside of the working hours. Now, for me, a lot of jobs these days aren't 9 to 5. I think
No.
that people, but the boundaries, and I think that uh, with technology, there are no boundaries. People just send off a text when they think about it, and then
Yeah.
and people have got so used to the phone that they go, I've got a text, I've got to answer it straight away, and you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to. So
No.
I think that boundaries have become a bit blurred. I think that people feel they have to attend to something immediately that it comes in, and that sometimes isn't a good thing because you might make poor judgment or
Mm,
things like that. I also think that there isn't that communication of, even thinking about the other person. It's just what that person wants. They shoot it off in an email or a phone call or a whatever or a text,
yeah.
and it's all about them, what they need, rather than even checking in to see how someone is. So I think it's all become, as you say, no one's patient anymore. They can't
Mm,
wait. Whereas I didn't have a phone in our house till I was in high school, and we never had a
mm,
car. We didn't. I was the first one in my family to have a car. So I think that I think we've become a bit more selfish with all the technology and the use of the technology.
mm, mm. What do you think, Sel?
Oh, I'm with Sue. I think we've become very self-centered. And, this is coming from my perspective and coming from my experience of having a teenage daughter
Yeah.
and their reactions to things.
Mm,
you know, for communication, for example, I told my daughter one day because I was dropping her somewhere
mm-hmm.
to a friend's grandmother's house, and we couldn't figure out which house it was. I said, give her a call, just ring her and find out what house it is, and let her know that you're in the street. But you don't ring people, Mum.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why not, Livy? And she goes, because that's interrupting them and disturbing them. I'll just text her. And I'm like, but you're not interrupting. She's given you her phone number so you can call her. And
Mm,
it was just that thinking. And I'm thinking, that is just very, very strange because, these days no one wants to ring no one wants to speak.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Everything is via text, as you said, emails, those sort of things.
Yeah, look, I can understand that, Sel. Because I'm processing it as you're saying it. The text is less invasive than a phone call, so that's how it's being seen. And I know that, for me, when I'm ringing you and chatting with you, I want to ring and I want to talk to you about whatever it happens to be and have a bit of a chin wag. And I know that your girls always say, "Oh God, when the two of you get on the phone, you get on the phone for how long are you going to be this time? Like seriously." And I know, but that's how it was back in the day of growing up, how we grew up. If you did get into a conversation with a friend, you were looking at them in the face, you were talking to them, and if you were on the phone, you would have long, long conversations because it wasn't just something that pops into your head every 5 seconds and you could send a text off. You couldn't do that. So yeah, communication was definitely like really, really different.
Very different. And
Yeah.
I think these days it impacts your values as well.
Mm.
I think technology has impacted our values a
Okay,
lot.
explore that a bit for me.
I just don't think, and as Sue was saying before, it comes down to, working in a business and the boss shoots you an email at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. There's
Yep.
no respect anymore, as
Mm.
you said, for boundaries. And values are respect, sympathy, empathy, compassion. None of that seems to exist
Yeah.
with technology because, and this was a big eye opener for me as far as my teenage daughter was concerned, because she said to me, she said it's so hard when people text you because you can't see what the emotion is. Like, you
No,
can't
you
see in
can't.
their eyes, you can't
Mm.
see the tone of their voice.
No, you can't hear it. Yeah.
All that is lost in text messages or emailing or Snapchatting or whatever they do. So I think some of those values we're sort of losing, please and thank you, manners, those sort of things, because of technology, because everything's rushed.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to think about, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I am saying that I think the kindness, the patience is something that we as women who have got a little bit of wiseness behind us, a few years behind us, then what we can do is step up and be examples for those that are around us. And I think that's a way to, say, hey, this is how we would act and how we would behave. So, I know that, I've got a couple of grandkids staying here at the moment. When they're asking for things, as you said, I just don't respond. If I don't get a please, it's like, Nan, yes, did you hear me? I did. And they go, oh, and they'll re-say it then. They realise that please has been, missed off of it. And it's just simple things like, going to just go to the fridge and get out whatever you want. In my day, you would have to ask, what, is it okay if I have this? You wouldn't just go and eat it, type of thing. So yeah, and like even when you go to, I was thinking about the shopping center as an example. You are lining up to go through the shopping, the queue. We can get very frustrated with wanting to get through that so quickly, and yet we had our local shop up the road. The people who owned the shop worked in the shop. You'd say hello, Mrs. Smith, and you'd talk to her, and she'd talk to you, and you would have a conversation. But because this expectation is that everything is so quick, we've got to do everything so quickly, we don't take that moment to pause and just sit. And so, and this is where this technology comes in as well too, because if a child's or sitting there, they can't just sit. You'll hear, I'm bored, but they want to pick up, they've got to pick up a device, they've got to have something to watch, they've got to have something to look at, they've got to have something to do. They don't understand what it's like to just sit and be. And it's very, very different. The morning routines that my grandkids have when they're with family to when they're with me, it's like, well, okay, yeah, we have a busy morning because we've got lots of things to do, but it's a very different type of busyness. The TV doesn't go on. And we do some stretching, we get outside, we do some exercise, we do some walking, we do all sorts of different things, and we have discussions about why health is important. And it does come back down to if we continue to show everybody that we have that level of patience and consideration, then it might wear off as well too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think we are role models, and the way we behave, especially with our family and our children and grandchildren, it comes back to us to show them the way. But also, I think we have to be open to new technology.
Totally.
I'll use texting in a way to show that I still care. Like, there's a couple of people that are going, my friends, I've got 2 friends that are going through a very difficult time at the moment. And I know that, I want them to know that I'm caring about them, but I also don't want to be intrusive, because one's with her mum at the hospital, her mum's in hospital and she's there all the time, but I need her to know that I'm there and I'm supporting her even, so I'll just shoot a quick email of, hi, how you going? Thinking about you, let me know if you need anything. So you can show that kindness to others. It doesn't always have to be a self-centered message. And that's when a text can be good, because I know, my brother was dying he lived in Thailand for the last few years of his life, and his children flew over and they rang me and said, look, Dad's not going to live for very long, and I hadn't spoken to him for about 20 or 30 years. So they arranged a phone call, but the rest of the time I was sending them texts and just little things like sending you a hug or things like that, and they said they appreciated that so much, because they didn't have to respond, but they knew that someone was actually thinking about them, rather than, oh, okay, that's sad, let's, I'm moving on with my life. It was just that little thing. But nothing beats a face-to-face conversation. And this thing of people like, Sal, maybe your children will be doing this, where they're even together, but they're texting each other in the same room.
I just spat all over the computer screen, because I've seen that happen.
Sue, it is so true. Livy had friends over about 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting out the back with them, and I've just looked at them and I went, get off your phones and talk to one another. And they just they all just go awkward, and they're like, oh, okay. And they put their phone down, and but it's so true. They're all in one room, but all on their device, messaging each other.
But I don't envy being a parent of children, coming through these days, because it is everywhere. And look, quite honestly, it's going to be way different in the next 60 years as well too. So it is life. We learn, we grow, things change, and that's a good thing. That's one thing that we're certain of. Everything is going to always be different. And so we're not saying let's not embrace the differences. What we really want to encourage everybody to do is to just show that little bit of care and patience to one another, no matter where you are, and just think about it. And look, I'm guilty of it. I send things off left, right, and centre as I think about them. And my mind runs at 100 miles an hour. So, but, it was something that I thought, hey, if we look at it from, our parents' perspective as well too, just how much more different is it for them? I can imagine what they're thinking in their head. I mean, I know that my mum now, she says to me, oh, can you check that googly thing about such and such? So she started to embrace a little bit of it. Not that she wants it, like I did when COVID broke out, and, newspaper. She couldn't get a newspaper. It was all online. She couldn't go to church. It was online. So I got her a little laptop, set it up so it was easy. So she watched it and she could do those things. But then the minute face-to-face came back, it was like, oh, no, I'm going face-to-face again. I just don't want to do this tech stuff. So she did it while it was important. But I really think that for her and the age that she is and what she's going through, keeping that going, I think, is important because it keeps her engaged in what else is happening outside of her four walls, because she does tend to sit inside those four walls.
Yeah.
But I think also, great from a social, we're losing our social communication skills because we're not having conversations. But again, also, I think the values are being lost. And it's actually interesting. I was listening to the radio last week, and some of, let's say, our children's generation are starting to push back with their own children. And they're saying, for example, TV, we're not having TV during the week, or things like that. They're realizing that perhaps, technology is there to be used and it's there for the benefit of us, but the values of, as Sal was saying, the compassion, the kindness, caring about other people, respect, all of that doesn't come from a technology background. That comes from human beings and who we are. And there's a lot of thing about this AI happening now and things like that. I mean, if you've got you can get an AI app to write a blog post or something. You don't even have to worry about that. So we're moving further and further away from the human touch and the human connection. And I think that now people are realizing, hopefully, that that's not necessarily the way to go. We use technology for the benefits it can give us, but we need to keep that human connection and that human interaction, and human emotion needs to be in there.
And also, Sue, saying that,
okay.
Sue, too, if you now have those AIs that can write a blog for you, it's making us lazier.
Yeah.
And we're not using our brains anymore. Where was I? Oh, the other day we were sitting at home, and one of the girls, I've got 3 girls in my life, one of the girls, I won't name them, we were talking about a car pulling up to the Bowser. And she said, "What's a Bowser?" And I went, I just put my hand in my head, my head in my hands, and she started laughing. And I went, "That you get your petrol from?" "Oh, the petrol pump thing." And I went, "Yeah, that's a petrol Bowser." But yeah, when you have so much technology, or you have so much technology doing things for you, I think we're getting lazier, and we're not using our mind as much as well.
Yeah. Well, if you look at neurodegenerative disease, it's in the top 3 killers type of thing. So, we've got the cancer and, cardiovascular, heart related type diseases as well too. So it's up there. So we need to do everything that we possibly can to keep our cognitive functions, do as much as we possibly can as well too. So, yeah. Look, and I remember a situation where I was, as I said, I worked at a tech company. And so I was actually out at a client's, and we were doing the install, and we'd had several training sessions, and it was our first end of month together. And so we were sitting there, and I'm explaining how it's going through the process of doing what it's doing. The little cogs used to turn around, you'd see them, so you knew it was actually doing something. And one of the ladies who was there, she said, "Oh, it's taking forever." And even back then in the 80s, it's taken forever. And I said to her, how long did it take you to do end of month? And she said, "Oh, it would usually take close to a week." And I said, So this is actually going to finish up in about 10 minutes time. So 10 minutes compared to a whole week, I think there's a lot of advantages to it. And I said, and just think about this, once you understand what it's doing, in that 10 minutes, you get up from your desk and you can go and have a cup of tea, coffee, you can go and have a chat with someone for 10 minutes. So there's a lot of benefits. And she went, oh, I didn't even think about it from that perspective. I said, you were just sitting there watching this little cog go round and round, weren't you? And you were going, oh, this is just like watching paint dry, which it was. So take advantage of it. So yeah. And look, if you come back to it, you know, some of those basic things of when you'd go to church on Sundays, you know, you'd go to school with the kids around your neighborhood. And so there was a real community spirit, and there was a lot of people involved in your upbringing. And I think now there's a lot of isolation in regards to that as well too. And I'm not, you know, like poo-pooing tech in any way, because, you know, we've got lots of ladies in our community who, you know, their family members are overseas, you know, in Vienna and all over the world type of thing. And so, you know, this technology, this form of how we're communicating right now is great, because they still get to interact with the grandkids and do the things still face to face and see the expressions and everything else like that. It hasn't got the touch associated with it, but there are still values in doing it. So yeah. So I think I just want to wrap up by saying, you know, that tech is great, but let's all step up a little bit and just lead a little bit more by example and show that level of patience and kindness to other people, and maybe just take it to that next level. So make it an uncomfortable kindness, as opposed to just a kindness in saying hello to someone. Maybe do that little extra thing for them. You're just going to change their day.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for joining me today, ladies.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all next week. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.